For Thursday, October 15th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Roll call, Manager Silka.
Commissioner Stump.
Here.
Commissioner Atwood.
Here.
Commissioner Blasco.
Here.
Commissioner Zona.
Here.
Commissioner Bevan.
Here.
Commissioner Goss.
Here.
Commissioner Haggis.
Here, could everyone please stand and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If any residents are interested in speaking tonight, they can sign the book of the podium. Thank you. First resident is Dave. If you could come up and state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Dave Baylong. I live at 1060 Legger Road. As many of you guys are well aware that there has been a cat issue in North Anglian Township in the past month. Last report, there were 75 cats taken out of a house on Legger Road. I adjoin the property to Legger Road, which is 820 Legger Road. The ammonia smells coming out of the house are absolutely atrocious. This started in May, right when the weather broke, April, May. My daughter had initiated this and started calling the Humane Society. It took a month or so for them to react to this. I've called Northampton Police on this several occasions. Officer Ted Kukich, I am in contact with bi-weekly on this issue. It is unbearable to come out of my house, let alone open a window or a door or my garage. I meant to bring fly traps that I have. I'm on my 6th set of 3 fly traps. There are thousands upon tens of thousands of flies in my property right now. Let alone the smell is just unbearable. I've talked to one zoning officer, and they said that the house is set for demolition. It has been condemned. I am pleading to you guys for an emergency demolition of this house. It is unbearable. Any of you guys, I'll bring every one of you over to my house so you can actually physically see this. I worked at U.S. Steel for 7 years. We have ammonia plants down there. An alarm goes off, it is time to evacuate. The ammonia smell coming from this house is atrocious. It is unbearable. I've talked to the veterinarian. Unfortunately, she could not be here tonight to comment on the ammonia smell coming from the house, but it is unsafe, absolutely unsafe, not to mention what's going to be coming. The rats, the flies are already here. It absolutely needs torn down ASAP. From my understanding, it's going to be a year or so out. Yesterday, I met with an investor, a listing agent, that they want to put the house on the market to sell. This is unacceptable. It needs taken down now. I have an investor, not an investor, I have a person that will take the house down at no charge. Myself, my labor included, will take the house down at no charge to the township or anybody else. I'm pleading with you guys, let us demolish this house and get rid of it. Take away all the potential danger coming my way. I have a witness here to testify on the smell. So,
Thank you, sir.
thanks.
Next resident is Neil. If you want to come up to the podium to state your name and address, sir. Is he your witness? Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
He has hearing.
Okay.
He cannot hear very well, so if you guys ask questions, he won't be able to.
All right.
So.
I can smell, unfortunately, and see. Yeah, I just basically being a witness for Dave. I live on the road, the property adjacent to where the house was condemned, and I mean, I was oversized. You could see the cats in the window. You know, they were locked in the house, and you could, even though the house was locked up, one window was broke, you could still smell it coming over. So I don't know. I mean, it was disgusting, obviously, but I'm just basically backing up as a witness, you know. He's not my brother or nothing.
Okay.
So that's all I got to
All
say.
right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That's all, everyone that's signed up. Anyone else interested in speaking tonight? All right. Not seeing anyone else. Response to citizen input. Mander Silka, can you maybe shed a light? I know they did come out, I believe, remove all the cats, I think. Where do we stand on it, trying to get in the home condemned and took down?
I actually don't have all the particulars,
Yeah.
but what we can do is we can definitely look and see if there is an emergency, we can work with our solicitor to see what we have to do. I know we are coming back next month with our demolition plan for this year, which has been kind of pushed off due to COVID and nobody working. So we will be coming up with a public hearing next week or next month for our demolition program. But we'll work with the solicitor's office to see what we need to do.
Usually it's not. Usually it's not back and forth. But if you got something else to say, you can come up.
Well, but
Yeah.
your comment, I mean, for the emergency, if I'm willing to take it down for free at my expense, will that be put into consideration as far as the next month's meeting?
Well, it's not how do we get it down, it's do we have the authority to go on and do it? It's still private property. So we have to make sure that as a township, we follow, the letter of the law before we take somebody's property.
Yes, sir. So explain to me, please, how that works on your behalf, how you would approach that as far as the next steps.
What I'll do is I defer to the solicitor.
Okay, what we do is we give the owner the right of due process. So that means that we give them notice that a hearing is pending. We give them the date, time, and location of the hearing. We offer that they can bring witnesses and that they will be called upon to defend their position that the house is not in such a deplorable condition as to be life-threatening.
Okay.
If the owner doesn't respond to the municipality, we will still schedule the hearing. And at that time, we will put in a record from our witnesses, which would include the township code enforcement officer, the township engineer, yourself, other people, if it's necessary, and then the record will be closed. Anybody can cross-examine anybody, so that it's like a little courtroom. If the applicant, or rather, if the owner shows up, he'll be afforded an opportunity to put in his case, and we will also have cross-examination of his witnesses. At the conclusion, then, the Board of Commissioners will make the decision as to whether or not the house is uninhabitable and poses a danger to the public or anybody that might live in there. Following that, the decision is reduced to writing, and we offer what we call findings of fact and conclusions of law in support of whatever position. And if it's to tear the house down, that would be prepared. All that then gets sent to the owner with a notice that we've made this decision, and he has 30 days from that date to take an appeal to the Court of Common Pleas. That's a little bit of an expensive process. That just doesn't happen overnight. He would need to probably have an attorney help him with that. At that point, then it would be ripe to be heard by a judge. There's a court reporter at our hearing. That record will be submitted to the judge, and oftentimes judges render decisions based on the record that's made before us the very first time. So it's important that we put a little bit of a record on if that's the case. Then the owner has another chance to take another appeal.
You're kidding me.
But that costs thousands and thousands of dollars. Generally, I'll say, and I've been through lots of these, this all gets disposed of at the hearing that the Board of Commissioners is going to have.
Next month.
Yes, and if the applicant doesn't show up, he's really gonna be behind the eight ball, because the record won't have his side of the story when it goes to court if he takes an appeal. If no appeal is taken, we can move forward right away.
So if I'm understanding you, sir, and I'm ignorant to all this stuff because I've never went through this, but from my understanding is at the next hearing, I should bring as many witnesses as I possibly can to testify in my behalf.
Oh, let me say this to you. You don't have to bring what I call oath helpers, people that are gonna say the same thing you're gonna say.
Okay.
Once it becomes redundant, you know, we generally shut it off. Realistically, it's, if I was standing in your position, you wanna check with the township engineer and the township code enforcement.
I have them on my side as well.
Okay, and they'll have submitted reports, and those generally, the commissioners give great weight to. They're the expert. They're getting
Absolutely,
paid.
yes, yes, sir.
You're
I
not getting
understand.
paid to do this, they are.
I
And they
understand.
know the difference between a house that is messy, but not life-threatening, messy, but not inhabitable.
Yes, sir.
So my advice is that you bring yourself and maybe somebody else, put you're a next door neighbor, bring a couple pictures if you think that'll help. Other than that.
Only if we had smell-o-vision, you'd be able to understand a lot better.
Bring a bottle of it.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I'll cut a wall out and bring it there and then put it out in front of you guys.
My suggestion is, you'll be given your chance to put on your side. And again, I want to stress to you, you don't get any points by saying the same thing over and over again.
Understanding.
So if you have 20 people that say, you want to bring a petition that says, hey, these are the people that are against it. Somebody wants to say, hey, I'm going to speak for 15 people that are sitting out here, that's fine.
Understanding. So, okay. I greatly appreciate your time and you guys hearing me. At the next meeting, I'm sure that Officer Kogic and the zoning officer will be here. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
Any other response to citizens' input?
I just wanted to add a couple things. I was briefed at the very end of the day by Josh Andrukowicz on this, the code enforcement officer. He did send a violation letter to the property owner September 28th. So to date, we have not heard back. So the 30 days is still running. He probably didn't get the letter until first couple days of October. Josh did say the house is structurally sound. It is locked. It's secure. He did not mention the smell, but he said from an emergency standpoint, there was no emergency with the structure itself. So I think he's waiting for the owner to respond. So we're still in that waiting period with the 30-day violation letter.
Before we set up a hearing, we need to know from both the engineer and the code enforcement officer if they believe the house is uninhabitable. Now, that uninhabitable could be due to the smell too. You might not be able to get it out. It might be structurally sound, but it's just something that you can't straighten out without an amount of money that's greater than what it's worth.
Right.
So we need to give the homeowner notice of this public hearing, and we need to have those opinion letters in hand when we send the notice out. So it might be premature to be sending notices out to schedule a hearing to demolish it. That's all, based on what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just it was the initial letter. It wasn't for a demo hearing.
Well, that's good. That would be admitted as one of the exhibits.
It was just to fix the problem.
Okay.
What we'll do is we'll get in contact with you, Bruce, and kind of bring you up to speed of where we are, and then you can advise us how to proceed.
Thank you.
There's also something that I want to add to that. If you have the ability, you may want to throw an offer at that owner and, okay, I was going to say, and then you'd own the property. Tear it down, you'd own it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Excuse me. It's bank owned. There is no private owner. It is owned by a bank. So what they are gonna do is they're gonna put this house on the internet. So anybody in Colorado can buy this house sight unseen and not have the full effect of what is actually going on with this house. That's why I'm pleading for an emergency demolition on this house. This could go on for years. If an investor buys this could go on for years.
You may want to get in touch with the asset manager for the bank. And, if you need help doing that, I can help you do that.
We
But-
definitely want to know the bank's address because they get notice of this hearing.
Yes.
And
It's on, you guys absolutely have record of it because whenever Josh came out and pinned that house,
so at the end, another step in this is that once the decision is done and it's torn down, we lien the property, and that lien will be against the bank, who generally pays the bill. They'll pay the bill. So oftentimes, when they get one of these notices, they'll talk to the municipality about some sort of remediation. Again, we'll see. It's a fluid situation.
So if I can go in a little deeper, I had the selling agent out there at the house yesterday. It was a woman and a son. And apparently this is like a family business that they do. They go in and they go into these investment banks that have deplorable property, and they buy these houses, and he comes in, it changes the locks and so on and so forth. Well, I'd seen him on the porch yesterday. I went over and addressed them, and they were already in the house, and they came out gagging, absolutely gagging. And I asked them what they were doing, what's your standpoint here, and they told me. And I says, have you guys looked at your pants yet? And they looked down, they had 10,000 fleas from their crotch down to their shoes. They were jumping around that yard like they were on fire. This is how bad, I mean, like, this is, this is no joke. This is how bad this is. Like the flies, I'm sure soon to be rats are gonna be coming into our area, my area. And this is something that needs to be addressed ASAP. It's bad. Like I said, over the winter, I knew he had cats. They disappeared for 3 years. I thought that he got rid of them all. Here he was hoarding them all in his house. I had no idea. This is a nuisance to our society, the person that lived there, period, let alone this house. This is terrible.
Now, who did you say was there?
Matt Jacobs.
And what's his position?
He's a scumbag crackhead. He was a
I mean, was he an owner, or was he a?
no, he was
banker?
a, what do you call them people that just move into a piece of property? His mother owned a squatter. His mother owned that house. He squatted on that property. No mortgage has been paid on the house in 8 years.
So it wasn't from the bank.
The bank he finally moved out because of the cat problem. It was overwhelming for him. Now the bank has finally stepped in after you guys condemned this house. You sent notice to the bank that it was condemned. Now they're taking action on the house. So that's where we're at on this.
Okay, well, that's all for the hearing we're gonna have.
Okay.
So what we can do is, I mean, we got some work to do on our end, and then we can keep you. We have your contact information, I believe.
I'll
we
give you my
can-
number. I don't believe I left my
All
number,
right.
but
Yeah, if you want to put it on here, and then we can contact you where we stand at it moving forward.
once again, thank you guys.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anything you guys can do moving forward would be.
Any other responses, citizen input? Thanks, sir.
Mr. Baylock. Mr. Baylock. Yes. Right here. Hey, I'm your commissioner. I'd like to meet with you after the meeting.
Absolutely.
I'd like to come over and take a look at the place too, if I may.
Oh my God, that'd be great.
Tomorrow?
Absolutely.
Let's talk.
Thank you. I work 2 to 10 tomorrow, so anytime before 1 o'clock, we're on.
We can do it. Okay, thank you.
All right. Work session discussion topics, Manager Silka.
Okay, the first topic for discussion tonight is the 2019 audit review led by our auditor, Mark Turnley, CPA. Mark, you have the floor.
Thank you, board members, for having me here this evening. I just wanted to go over some of the financial highlights of the 2019 audit of the North Huntington Township. A few months back, we had given you the what I call the actual audit report itself, the detailed audit report. But in lieu of that this evening, for the sake of the board and time, I prepared a synopsis. It's a 5-page synopsis that kind of shows a history, including the 2019 year, of various highlights within that audit report. So it's dated for this evening, and one of the first bullet points says general fund balance analysis. So if you have that document, that's the one I'm going to be referring to. On that first page, at the bottom, it shows a 5-year history of your largest fund, your operating fund, which is the general fund. And it shows the ending reserve fund balance as of the end of each of these calendar years. So you can see since 2015 through 2019 where the fund balance has increased or decreased over those years. You can see as of the end of December of this year, you ended at $3,862,405. Now, just to put that in perspective, on top of the second page, there's an organization in our profession called the Government Finance Officers Association, because a lot of times commissioners, supervisors, those in charge with governance will say, Mark, what is a recommended level of fund balance approach? And what they believe, after just studies over the years of various municipalities, is that you should have or try to have a fund balance whereby 2 months average expenditures over the course of the year is your fund balance level at a minimum. Now, for North Huntington Township, the unassigned fund balance at the end of the year was $3,498,000, almost $3.5 million. So they always equate that to the budget. So in your case, that was 24% of the budget. When I do the math that the GFOA recommends, the 2 months average expenditures comes to about $2.349 million. So that percentage is 16%. So the bottom line is your current unassigned fund balance level exceeds that GFOA recommended level. So in layman's terms, that's a good thing. That's in the right position to be. But I wanted to put that perspective out there so you can see what the independent industry looks at in terms of a recommended level for fund balance. Below that, just a history of your general fund revenues, so you can see how they've changed over the last 5 calendar years, from 2015 to 2019. Once again, this is just the general fund, not the other pots of money, which I'll refer to in a minute. So self-explanatory in and of itself. On the top of page 3, just like revenues, I've given you a 5-year history of the general fund actual expenditures. So you can see the increases, again, since calendar year 2015 down to 2019. In the middle of page 3, specifically related to calendar year 2019, I just wanted to show you how you did budget versus actual. In the first bullet point I concentrate on are revenues. And as I highlight in bold and tell you, the actual revenues in the general fund for 2019 exceeded budgeted revenues by about $654,000. And the main areas were real estate transfer taxes and earned income taxes. And you can see how much they exceeded budget. And those two in and of itself account for that overage, actual versus budget. In the thick audit report itself, I always recommend to my boards that in those audit reports, I always put a detailed schedule, line item by line item, of how the commissioners budgeted for the calendar year, budget versus actual, and then the favorable or unfavorable balance. So I just point to your attention there that on pages 38 and 39 of that thick audit report that you received a while back is that breakdown for revenue. So you can see all the areas where you exceeded or did not exceed budget for the year. The second bullet point, budgeted expenditures exceeded actual expenditures, which ideally is what you want, by about $120,000, 6%, within 6% of your budget. Again, all major functional areas were within budget, under budget. You had a little excess in expenditures in the area of some employee benefit costs, pension, but other than that, for the most part, you were all under budget in all the major categories. Again, just like I said with revenues, there's a schedule on the back of that thick audit report on pages 40 through 45, which again, line item by department, expenditures actual versus budget, and whether it was favorable or unfavorable for the year. So again, those schedules not only show you how you did with regard to your budgeting process, but also provide some information for budgeting into the future, how we did in one area versus the other, how did we do, if we made any mistakes or thoughts in our assumption in preparing that budget. This gives you a good indication moving forward for improvement. I just note the 4 major departments at the very bottom of page 3, how you did a budget versus actual: general, police, public works, and culture and recreation. You can see the budget amount, the actual amount, and in all cases, it was a favorable outcome for calendar year 2019. On the top of page 4, just to finish with the general fund, when you did your budget, you planned to use, in order to balance your budget, you planned to use about $2,354,000 of your reserves from the prior year to balance your budget. But in actuality, as the numbers show in the thick audit report, you only needed to use about $880,000. So you were under what you had planned to take, which again, I like to say is a good thing. That's what you want to do for the year. in addition to that general fund, you have other pots of funds which are restricted for particular purposes. So nowhere in size related to the general fund, but I just listed them here under results of other fund activity so you can see the increase or decrease for the year. There's more detailed information regarding these other funds in the thick audit report, but this is a encapsulation of how each of them did for the year: the liquid fuels, light, water, fire service, park, and capital project. Once again, just for the commissioners' informational purposes. And then at the bottom of page 4 and 5 are just some recommendations I usually give to my municipalities with regard to these two particular issues. It's not that anything was wrong, but it's just more a reminder, a recommendation of the importance of these areas. The last bullet point that I have on page 5 has been a hot topic in our industry: cybersecurity policies and procedures. We undergo what's called a peer review every 3 years, and we actually have a gentleman like myself that comes in and audits us to see how our quality control procedures are and things of that nature. And one thing he asked me that during the last peer review, he said, "Mark, are you looking or telling your clients of the importance of cybersecurity policies and procedures?" He goes, "If you're not, you need to start having that in your management letter. You don't need to be an expert in it. I'm surely no expert in that. It's not my field of expertise, but I'm smart enough to know that when my peer review guy who grades me tells me to put something in a management letter, I'm going to do it for the sake of the board." So it's just to point out, the avenues of theft and oversight from an outside agency or person that you don't want in your business, to have the protective measures in place to ensure that your records, the personnel records and all other records that you want to keep safe, are properly protected. So in a nutshell, I think those are the highlights. There's a lot of information in that thick report. Spend a lot of time on that, but I thought for the sake of this evening and the presentation, I would just give you those highlights. So at this particular time, if anyone has any questions related to either the thick audit report itself or what the information I've talked about so far, I'll be more than happy to answer your question if I can.
Any questions for Mark? All right, appreciate you coming out. I think you got no questions, so you got off easy tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
All right, Manager Silka.
Okay, give me 1 second here to get my audit AV back up. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks.
My first topic tonight is going to be the third quarter review of spending, which I had placed on your seats tonight. Let me get this open and. I apologize for the delay. All right. As I do every quarter, I try to give a brief breakdown of where we stand from prior years, until today. The third quarter ending September, we had a revised budget of $13,906,640, and through the third quarter of 2020, we collected roughly 77% of our anticipated revenue and outlaid 62% of our anticipated expenditures. This year, our revenue was $10,772,350, and our expenses were $8,632,175. As you can see, we're a little bit less on both revenue and less on expenses than 2019. The revenue, both of those can be attributed to the policies we adopted as we revised the budget as we went into the pandemic. Taking a look at all of our departments, In expenditures, through the third quarter, we don't have anything really over 80% spending. We want to be 75% or over. We have no category in our major categories that's over 80%. In the 70 to 80% categories, governing body, administration, planning and zoning, insurance, and tax refunds, we're trending right exactly where we should be. The ones that are trending a little bit, less, which is good on expenditures, the police department, public works, parks, because we really haven't done a lot of any of our activities due to the pandemic, tax collections, fire departments, and less than 50% crossing guards because they basically didn't work at all through the latter part of the year, and then emergency management and community development because we haven't done our community demolitions yet. If you kind of just take a look overall, we're about $775,000 less in revenue than we were in 2019. Now, we have a few expense items that are trending above budget amounts, but a lot of this can be contributed to unanticipated expenses through COVID. Our miscellaneous and building supplies were definitely impacted because we had to buy PPE, buy cleaning, have the electrostatic cleanings and disinfection of the police vehicles and our offices. The consulting services is trending higher. We are currently in a labor dispute with on a police issue that's coming up with some unanticipated labor costs that went into that line item. Townhouse repairs, it's trending a little bit higher. That's because we have an increased maintenance of HVAC. That issue is under review. We'll be recommending an engineer at the November meeting to do the survey and start that process that we talked about a couple months ago. The planning and professional services is trending higher. This is due to increased plan review of KU resources. The good part of this is offset in the engineering fee line item because the majority of these reviews are billed back to the developer. So we've actually put the line item in this year and making sure that we showed in the budget that yes, it's trending higher, but we are getting it reimbursed through the developer. The revenue is showing the impacts. We're basically $173,000 less in revenue than we were last year, but we had an anomaly in the gross receipts collection that makes that a little bit rosier number than usual. The line items that are trending below 2019, real estate tax, we're trending at $30,000 less. However, we do have the no penalty until the end of the year, so I'm hoping that this should queue us up to where we need to be. The real estate transfer tax is $54,000 under. We lost a lot of real estate in the first quarter, in the second quarter, because it was shut down and you weren't allowed to sell, and that didn't pick up yet. Business gross receipts taxes, that's a major ding at almost $81,000, and that's paid on prior year's taxes. Now, what we may see is a little bit more increased delinquent as the taxes for this year were due yesterday. Was the last day for extended filing. So hopefully when people get their filing and wait at the last minute, we'll then pay back at the penalty phase. Highway occupancy permits are down, and that was due basically to no construction work being done other than emergency construction work through the first quarter and a half. Our drug task force reimbursements were down simply because they didn't do anything during the COVID shutdowns. Drilling impact fees, $17,000 less. That's simply there was less drilling going on, and that's the fracking market. It's up and down. When oil's high, fracking's good. When oil's low, fracking's bad. So that's a fluctuating revenue stream. Building permits are $20,000 down because in the peak of our building season, building was not allowed to go on. So we lost a lot of that in the spring, and haven't recovered that yet. Recreational rentals down $17,000. That is simply, people weren't renting enough pavilions early in the year. And then the insurance dividend was done $102,350. That's a floating number, and that goes basically based on 3 to 5 years worth of claims and how we did on those years. So we're entering into the dividend area of some high claim years. So as we get through those in the next year or two, that should start trending back up. So we had, basically $356,000 in revenue loss from last year. However, our gross receipts came in at almost 300% more. We're we've collected almost $150,000 in delinquent gross receipts taxes this year. Whenever we saw that, I did call Shelley Buchanan and ask, is there something wrong? She goes, no, I'm just a great tax collector. And we did we reconciled what she gave us, what we put in. Our numbers are right. It's just that we've got a lot more money in this year for delinquent gross receipts. And it helped us because it's the year we definitely needed it. So that's where it kind of balances out to about $175,000 difference. Now, on the good part with the COVID expenses, there are ways to recoup these costs. And currently we have roughly $61,000 in grant applications out there. We have a PEMA reimbursement of $18,192 for cleaning PPE expenses. We have a federal CARES Act for police overtime at $2,360 through May 2020. We just applied for the Westmoreland CARES Act for the $30,000 max that we can apply for that one for police and dispatch overtime costs. And Zoom subscription will be passing a resolution at the next meeting to make our application complete. The application had to be in today, and the resolution has to be in by the 26th of October. And then we have roughly $10,000 coming out back from the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which pays us for people who took the 80 hours of sick time allotted by the Act if they were medically ordered to quarantine for COVID, and also if they took the 2/3 pay for childcare because either the school or their childcare was was not available. So that is reimbursed for those costs coming through. Those applications are in, and we're just waiting for the reimbursement cycles to go. So we're trending okay. I think we're trending a little bit better than we thought we would trend through this. Our real estate tax, our earned income tax is coming in a little bit higher than last year. So, we're a little bit more stable, but yet trending low on a couple areas. So we're not at where we want to be. So what we have to keep is the uncertainty of the revenue through the end of the year and into 2021, because we don't know what the crystal ball is going to show us for real estate tax collection. And we can almost guarantee that going into 2021, our business gross receipts taxes are going to be less. I mean, they're less now. We know that a lot of our businesses have been closed for, months, quarters. Bars haven't been operating. So we know we're going to see less than that because that's based on this year's revenue. And we want to make sure that we, have to watch any projects or programs that we add after the adoption of the budget. And as living in North Huntington Township, our landslides, our pipes flood. So, and those are some things we can't push off. So, I think it's a confident third quarter going into the end of the year. We're going to watch it vigilantly. And, I'd like to thank the directors who really put in the work of cutting the budget, and then not only cutting the budget, because it's easy to put a number on paper, but whenever you have to live within that budget and bring it in through the end, the team did well. And I'm glad to answer any questions you may have. Okay. The next item is the model stormwater ordinance. I'm going to ask Paul Christner, our township engineer, to kind of walk you through this. This was given to you electronically, as it's a very voluminous document. It's also on our website under our agenda, in our agenda center. So, Paul, I'm going to give you the floor.
All right. Evening, commissioners. So I just wanted to come up and give a little about for the new stormwater management ordinance, kind of highlight some of the more noticeable differences. It's an 80-page document. Had a handful of acts to follow, so don't fall asleep on me. So to start things off, give you a little bit of an about. The new stormwater management ordinance is actually based on the Westmoreland County model stormwater management ordinance, and that was based on DEP, so the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, their model stormwater management ordinance. So under Pennsylvania State Act 167, DEP was actually required to develop a model ordinance, and then I also believe that each one of the counties was then responsible for developing a comprehensive stormwater management plan. Every county in the state's under a different timeline. Westmoreland County, every municipality is required to adopt a new ordinance by the end of the calendar year. I believe that the overall goal is that every municipality in the state is going to be under the same umbrella by 2022. So just a little bit of an about in terms of how we got here. So kind of moving on, some of the more noticeable differences. Something to note before I kind of go into things, I developed a list of technical questions, comments, and actually met with the Conservation District back in September to hash everything out before I made changes. There was a lot of minor changes, massages, things of that nature. But some of the more noticeable things, the first one includes Article 112. This is something that we actually put in. It wasn't part of any of the model ordinances, and it speaks towards North Huntington Township road right-of-way conveyance responsibilities. This is kind of broken up into two pieces. You can think of channelized flow, so flow through and flowing through a culvert, maybe it's a stream, perennial or intermittent, or stormwater collection system in a roadway that maybe discharges from the side of the road. That's kind of the first part. The second being a sheet flow, shallow concentrated flow condition coming off of an existing road, kind of more geared towards older roads. The culvert condition that I kind of mentioned, that is a lot of my understanding as an engineer and kind of what I think's been policy. It's just not written anywhere. A lot of this comes down to, I think it's important that we put this article in there because there's a lot. I've been here for 10 months and I've fielded a lot of calls about water, and it hasn't even been that wet of a year. And I think it's really important that we just have this somewhere so that staff can anchor off of something legitimately. Because it's very important that we own property, parcels, and then we're responsible for right-of-ways and easements. We're not responsible for every drop of water within the bounds of the municipality. So that's something that's in there. Definitely recommend to take a look at that. Another thing that's been updated are stormwater management performance districts. So with the new ordinance, North Huntington Township's in 3 stormwater management watersheds. That's the Turtle Creek watershed, the Swickley Creek watershed, and the Youghiogheny River watershed. Each one of them then is broken up into performance districts. And each performance district has a release rate percentage. If you're asking yourself what is a release rate percentage, think of a farm. It's a big parcel, it's a farm. Currently existing conditions has a certain amount of runoff potential. Say that farm is sold and developed and there's a shopping center put there, or a developer puts a subdivision. You're greatly increasing impervious coverage and you're greatly increasing runoff potential from a land cover perspective. So these release rate percentages all range from 50 to 90%. So actually what you're doing by meeting stormwater management measures is you're actually making it better from its current state, being a farm or whatever it may be. So we actually currently have stormwater management performance districts, watersheds, but this is more of a vamped process because the Conservation District actually, as part of their comprehensive stormwater management plan, hired a consultant to study basically the entire county, the majority of it. And we now also have all this in GIS too, which is really, really helpful because this is our current ordinance kind of antiquated. It was actually really hard for me to understand it whenever I first got here. Kind of had to make some cartoons to try to understand where things were. Our new one's totally in GIS. So somebody could call in and within a minute we can drill down exactly what performance district they're in. So that's something that's had an update. Another thing would be small projects. So our current ordinance reads that any residential construction creating less than 5,000 square feet of impervious surfaces shall not apply. So think of like a single lot off of a, say, county, state road. Somebody wants to build a house. If they're under 5,000 square feet of impervious surfaces up till when this is the new one's adopted, they would need a stormwater management measure. But we now have language in here about a small project. So that now ranges from 3,000 square feet to 10,000 for impervious coverage. So the Conservation District and as well as I have helped make this stricter, but there's kind of a balancing act with it where we have an entire appendix donated to what's called a small project. Appendix C is like 20 pages, and there's examples that walk you through. And there's a lot of things that small projects are exempt from. They're not exempt from actually the performance districts and the release rates. They just need to retain the first 2 inches of runoff volume. And there's different measures that they can implement in order to take care of everything, such as credits, volume control. Some of the credits are existing trees, proposed trees, not compacting existing earth, some of the volume control measures or best management practices, dry well seepage pits, things of that nature, to try to alleviate all this design services that a homeowner might need just because he wants to build a garage. So small projects are really refined. I think that with the county's help, that was something that was really, really well done. Another thing kind of goes hand in hand with our standard construction details. We now have more refined pipe material types that we're going to include in there. Just something more for the standard construction details, but that's actually in this ordinance. And then the last two things that I just want to talk about are operation and inspection matters. We currently have what's called an O&M agreement, so an operation and maintenance agreement. The new ordinance, it's very similar. But there's new language in our new ordinance that an O&M agreement over 10 acres will require Board of Commissioners approval. So just something to eventually keep an eye out for. And the last thing is something that is also now going to be required is a North Huntington Township Stormwater Management Fund. So this is interesting. Basically, this is for not for small projects. So think land development, subdivisions. For land development matters where stormwater management facilities are going to be privately owned. The developer will be required to submit a deposit to the township to cover inspection services for 10 years. And in a case where we would maybe accept infrastructure, say a subdivision, that developer will be required to deposit funds for 10 years for inspections and O&M. So that's something that I think is a great thing to have in there, especially for all things considered. So that pretty much wraps it up. Like I said, kind of about quick highlight for some of the differences, and I'm here if you have any questions.
Any board questions? Not, thanks. I appreciate all the hard work.
Yeah.
Okay, it'll be put on the agenda for to authorize the publication. It'll be adopted in November. Jonathan, if I can have the screen back. Okay. The next item that I want to talk about is the road program for 2021 and 2022. As you recall, Bob Robinson at the meeting last month kind of talked about a proposal of changing how we allocate streets and bid our projects out to possibly take advantage of some value of not having mobilization throughout the entire township, and possibly saving between 8 and 10%, probably about 8 to 10% on mobilization fees, to be able to put that into macadam and asphalt instead of moving machinery throughout the borough or the township. Excuse me. That's all. So, taking a look at our roads from our scan of 2019, our wards with the most D and F roads are 1, 2, and 6. So those are the roads that basically need the most TLC and to be able to get on so they don't continue to deteriorate. What we know that we're going to have roughly about $860,000 of funds available for paving next year, and what Bob has recommended is that we do roads in wards 1, 2, and some in 6, because it's kind of touching those other wards next year for the $860,000, and then come back in 2022 in wards 6 and 7, and then wards 2 and 3 in 23. And what this does is kind of utilizes the best management practice to concentrate our paving efforts into small area, smaller geographic areas, less time going back and forth, more time putting product down on the road. This deviates a little bit from our past practice of basically trying to touch, small areas throughout the township. But then, as we talked, there was, money wasted in mobilization throughout the township. I don't want to discuss this too much. Bob did a really good job explaining why we want to do this. This is basically our plan. Well, what we generally do is have the board approve in October, the roads for the next year. Then we start working on our bids, so we have our bids out early in January, so we lock up the contractors early. I mean, if this is something the board would be wanting to do, we could do it. I mean, the roads that are listed, on the spreadsheet are the DNF roads. If there's a road within the area that maybe flip it out, it wouldn't be that much of a problem to take a look at. But our recommendation from our engineer who does our roads is that we do it with this one with 1, 2, and 7 for 1, 2, and 6 for next year, coming back with 6 and 7 next year. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that I possibly can. Bob can't be here today because he's driving to New Mexico to partake in a hunt.
Any board discussion or questions for the road paving program? All right.
Okay. I appreciate your consideration of this. And my fifth and final new item today is just the Kingsbury Road Plan and Stormwater Facilities Detention Act dedication. Since this is the first one we've done since I think the board has transitioned, I just wanted to update the procedure. Kingsbury, as you may remember, we had to have the developer go back and do some major revisions as it wasn't put into plan. The developer did do that. The roads have been inspected. The drainage has been put into plan. So we're draining the roads into the swells and into the areas. Our township road engineer has recommended dedication. The ordinance has been prepared and published. So I just want to, this is how we do it. What we'll do is we will, officially take the ownership of the roads and the stormwater facilities at the next meeting if the board so chooses to vote. But it's just process. It's been inspected by our inspector and recommended for dedication.
Any questions? Thanks, Jeff.
And that's what I have on this portion.
All right, thanks. Plan and engineering topics. Director Fonzie.
Hello again. Okay, we had two plans that came through the Planning Commission this month. Both are site plans. The first plan is SP7 2020 Bella Construction Plan. As you know, Bella Construction is an existing business that's in the LaDonna Village Plaza, and they are outgrowing that space, and they're currently renting. They want to own. So the owner of the company purchased a property on Route 30, which is next to Pecora Flooring. It's actually the old Massung home that had the poultry business years ago. There's a better shot of it. Outlined in yellow, it's right next to the old Highway Tux. Sorry, I speak in old businesses, but I've been a resident for a long time. It's a little over 2 acres. There are 3 existing homes. Those are the red polygons. So what the owner is proposing is the changes in orange. So the house in the front is going to be the main office, and he is proposing a 2,000 square foot addition. That's the orange polygon that you can see closest to Route 30. And that addition would contain some offices, a conference area. The other orange polygon on the northern side of the property, there was a building footprint from an old barn that was there. So the barn is no longer existing, but the footprint is still there. The owner would like to build a 1,600 square foot storage building. This would house some vehicles, building materials, things like that. The red home in the middle could be used as offices, extra office space. And the small house at the bottom there, I think he's going to continue to rent it out because these are currently used as residences, but the whole property is zoned C1 commercial. So it would actually be a good fit, kind of spruce up that side of the township a little bit. The Planning Commission did recommend approval. There are some third-party approvals that will need to happen, such as HOP from PennDOT for the driveway access on the south side of the property there. He'll need an extra EDU for sewage planning from DEP, and there are still some stormwater approvals he'll need from Conservation District. So, but those applications have been submitted. They're well on their way. So we're just kind of waiting to get those other approvals. But does the board have any questions on this one? And that's kind of what the outside would look like. There's the addition. There'll be an ADA ramp. If you've driven by it, you'll see that there's a house. There's actually some bluish siding on. He's kind of done 3 sides of it. He's waiting to get the approvals to build the addition. Then he would match the existing siding there, so it would all be uniform. Okay. The second and final item is conditional use 1 2020, subdivision 10 2020, and site plan 8 2020. This is the Huntington Marketplace multi-tenant buildings 2 and 3. So down on Mills Drive across from Walmart at the corner of Rhonda and Mills, we have a multi-tenant building that's there existing. It's the Knockouts. There's a bank there. This is the next lot up. It actually will be 2 lots, and they're going to be identical buildings. Each building is 6,887 square feet in size. So those are the footprints highlighted in blue. Again, they'll each be on their separate lot. We don't know any tenants at this point. What I like about this site is there's a road in the rear that connects the sites above and below. So you're going to have that inner access without going out on the main road, which I think is important. There's a little bit of landscaping proposed. And again, this received approval from the Planning Commission. Still working on some third-party approvals. The sewage planning for this was done already with the overall site. So there's just a couple outstanding items related to stormwater that we're working through right now. Does the board have any questions on this one?
Right, my only question would be for lighting that would go along Delaware. Is the lighting plan similar to what Walmart is, a low-impact lighting? Do you know what their scale is?
It'll definitely be 90-degree cutoff. I think the buffer there, the vegetative buffer, has actually been growing up over the years, so it's not that drastic between the Lincoln Hills properties and what you'll see at the rear of this site. But yeah, the lights will be shielded if need be, but definitely 90-degree cutoff, and we'll adjust it if necessary. That's all I have.
Thank you. Moving on to old business. Manager Silka.
Okay, we just started discussing last month a noise ordinance, and we sent one up with some discussion items on, some of the revisions that are marked in green. And I guess it would be up to the board to continue the discussion, see how you want to proceed with a proposed noise ordinance. Chief Rizzo made a few revisions onto it.
Again, I'd like to thank everybody for taking a second look at this, especially from the previous board. The one issue that I'd like to address would be in section 3 for commercial and residential use of machinery. And it's tough. I just sent you guys an email about what a list of times would look like, because the way we have this listed, or it's difficult to read it out. But I would like to see property owners' rights protected on Saturdays and Sundays through 8 a.m. I think that's especially important when we have our newer housing developments, as we see with Tuscan Hills and new developments coming through, that we don't have construction starting at the crack of dawn on our typical weekends for most individuals. But I think with the 9 p.m. change that we made previously, that goes in line with our fireworks, so I think it's a good change. But just asking for consideration for a 8 a.m. quiet hours starting to allow hours Saturday and Sunday.
I think we are all in receipt of a letter from the shooting range that wanted to keep their hours the same. And if there's anything that we can do to respect that and keep it the same, I would be in favor of that.
Shooting ranges are exempt under state law. We can't regulate their noise. So, they are exempt.
Okay. Because I was going to suggest just what Virginia was saying, that we add them under Section 7 exemptions.
I talked to Jeff about that. We could maybe
Yeah.
just add that, just
Yeah.
stating that they already exempt, but just make it part of our policy so it's clearly in there.
That's what I'd like to see too, yeah. Thanks.
I'm okay with the current structure with 7 a.m. as a start for the weekends. Other than that, like we talked about with the gun range reaching out to us about putting that in there. That's the only comments that I would have on policy, and I'm okay putting it on for next week. Any other board comments?
I mean, I'm okay with the times in there, but I would support what Brian said. Maybe move it to 8 o'clock on Saturdays and Sundays for the weekend, for the morning.
I'm gonna have to agree. I'd like to even see Sunday pushed further. That's the Lord's Day, man. That's, I know I can't impose my religious beliefs on people, but I still believe in the Sabbath. I think Sunday's the Sabbath. I think that if you can't get your work done in 6 days, I don't know, but something's going on wrong, man. If you have to work 7 days a week, but I'm going to go ahead and support also what Brian has to say too, please.
Is that a consensus? The board wants to see the weekends moved to 8 a.m. as a start time. All right, Jeff, you want to make that change to 8 a.m. and then putting a note there and exceptions about the gun ranges.
Okay,
Thanks.
good. We'll get that on to approve for publication at the next meeting. The next item is the of old business regulation of chicken keeping in residential neighborhoods. And Ryan, Director Fonzie did submit a memo. And I'm sorry, but my computer's not working right now to get it up. But everyone was given the memo, the difference between a there it is, a conditional use and a special use permit. I mean, we can have discussion on that. There may be a conditional use, if that's how you want to go, would be a little bit more equitable for the board, because that puts the decision making back on the board.
I would just like to voice an opinion that I think having the regular ordinance would be superior to using a conditional use or a special use. I think it'd be much easier to administer.
I'd like to start my talking point off actually with an apology to Commissioner Atwood, based off of last meeting's discussion and how I thought that we were moving forward. And we had so much discussion of those that were passionate for this and those that were hoping to protect the property rights that I only kind of saw two paths. We kept saying, hey, we can pass this with a 4-3 vote. And I did call out Commissioner Atwood for his comments, and I misconstrued them because I only saw two avenues. I saw pass it or look at the special use. And obviously, Commissioner Atwood was looking at option 3, which I don't think many of us were looking at. So, Jason, I do apologize once again.
Thank you, Brian. I
just want to put
appreciate
that on the record. So, I was wrong.
I think I agree with you, Virginia. I just think that we need an appropriate policy. I know that I'm the one that wanted to see this conditional use and all that stuff, but I just wanted to have the options of looking at all of this material before I decided what I think would be the best route. But I think an appropriate policy would be better because there's no cost incurred except through the violations. And complaints can still be processed on a case-by-case basis. And I just think that these costs are really too prohibitive for residents in North Huntington Township.
If I'm not mistaken, I mean, Jeff, we could probably adjust the conditional use permitting for chickens if we decided to do that, right?
Yes, I mean, we could adjust it down to the point where it would cover the posting and the court reporter.
And I think, too, with the conditional use, I wanted to kind of go down this avenue. I know we kind of, I guess, had a heated debate last time, which is a good thing. I think it's healthy. But nonetheless, I wanted to do that because it didn't seem like we could compromise to what I thought was a favorable 1 acre through the policy. So that's why I talked about the conditional use. And the reason I mentioned the conditional use is because I don't want to make it difficult for people to do what they want on their property, but I want people that are serious about owning chickens So this part would make people go through a little bit more of a process other than just coming up and putting an application in and getting it approved and paying $50 and then going to Tractor Farm Supply Store and buying some chickens and letting them roam around the backyard. With this avenue, there's a little bit more of procedures to go through, and it makes people kind of get vetted to make sure they are serious about owning the chickens. And I would hope that we would probably alleviate maybe some issues down the road with that. But so I'm obviously in favor of doing the conditional use permitting, which would the kind of staff recommended.
I would support just what you said, Zach. It's the same exact reason. And I would say, when I read that $750, I thought we could lower that way down too. But I agree with you. I mean, at least it's going to be somebody that's serious about it, not somebody that just gets some chickens for Easter or something and then end up letting them go in the neighborhood. So,
And I can agree with the other two gentlemen. And I think, Virginia, a lot of what you kind of put into your previous drafts is things that we can use in ideas and making it so simple as, hey, conditional use. If my neighbors agree to it, regardless of property size, I mean, as we know, we have a diverse set of properties in the township. So you might have a quarter-acre parcel but not have anyone in a home, for a quarter mile from you. So I think that's something I could support and not have any fear of its negative ramifications for the township.
I'd also have to agree with the special use. I think that is the best way to go. Looking at, at the responsibility of the people who are applying is probably the best thing for us to do.
I think too, I think all the work that you, Virginia, and other people that put into the ordinance, I think that's all issues that we still have on the books for people that do own the chickens. It's just not going to be as simple, I guess I should say, as getting a permit than following the ordinance. It'd be come up for the conditional use, have the hearing, and then once you have the conditional use approved, you would follow the ordinance that you were, obviously allowed. So, I guess that we could put that in the ordinance that we would have a conditional use approval, and then you would follow what the rest of the ordinance would be stating.
I would still like to say that either of those options, the conditional use or the special use, will put an added burden on staff here. And I think they're probably stretched far enough as it is, and would not look to add staff to handle something like this. So it's going to create an internal burden as well, administrative burden.
I would think no matter which way we go, it's going to create an additional burden on the staff.
and I think looking at the ordinance, we kept hearing in here, not to get into the whole argument again, but we kept hearing that there'd be so few people that put in that it wouldn't burden anybody here. But now we're going to say if we do it this way, it is going to burden them. I think either way, there's going to be less people putting in for it this way, which will be less of a burden, is what I think.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I heard maybe 4 people would like to explore going down the use of a conditional use permitting. I don't know if we want to put that on the form as a, for something on to vote on for next week, but we could do that if the board's interested.
Okay, I can put on to authorize to prepare an amendment to the zoning ordinance to include special exceptions in all zoning districts.
All right, and then with that,
Not special exceptions.
conditional.
I'm sorry, conditional use, yes.
Conditional use, and then if you could, explore actually what the cost would be for the township to go down the conditional use path, and let's try to decrease that amount as much as we can.
Yeah, well, what I'll do is I'll get an average of our conditional use hearings, how much,
Yeah.
the transcription costs. I can get that out to you guys.
All right, thank you.
Zach, if I may say, so you did say four gentlemen, and I would like to go ahead and cast on my side on Virginia with
Okay.
being with Virginia and Fran,
All right,
just for the record.
yeah, definitely.
All right, thank you.
I believe that is it for old business unless anyone else has anything. Any further board comments tonight?
Yeah, one thing I'd like to add on to is for the board's consideration to have a resolution to the governor's office as well as to Dunbar's and Ward's office in regards to the governor's plan of legalizing recreational marijuana. I think as a township we should stand against those kind of activities. If you've been to these states where that's now legalized, I feel it's been a detriment to those cultures. So I just want to see the board's thoughts on doing a resolution opposing that for our lifestyle and maintain our community values. And the second thing, we're currently have our Lions Park closed down tentatively for some construction issues. I was down at Lions Park today around 1:30, and it was in use, and there was only a few construction vehicles. So rather than have Lions Park closed, Jeff, if we can just put an advisory saying, take caution when there. I mean, there's no signs posted, but I don't see a safety risk there for any participants, especially with nicer weather we've been having. So,
You know, the reason we weren't sure how much time we're gonna need because we were moving equipment back and forth, and we didn't want people walking and getting in the middle. So yeah, we are kind of opening it intermittently. Then we'll close it again whenever we're bringing everything back from Free to Drive, which is up there right now. So yes, we can keep it open a little bit more.
okay, thank you.
I'd like to say two things, if I may. So, not this past Saturday, but Saturday last 2 Saturdays ago. So I'm sitting there watching TV midnight, and I got the windows open, and one of my favorite car shows was over. I get up and I stretch out and I go to the window, and I see a guy standing in my driveway attempting to break into my cars, and I'm like, oh, hell no. And he heard me. I grabbed my pistol. I started running out the door. He starts running up the road, and I painted his back with a red laser and then flashed the laser up the road, and then I think another car was up there waiting for him. Well, I called the police immediately. The police responded within 5 to 7 minutes. They were there, 3 squad cars. I mean, it was beautiful. I just wanted to bring special attention to the police department, thank them for their quick response, and just let everybody know that the nitwits are back, and I mean that. The nitwit criminals are back. So please, for God's sake, lock up your cars. If you're going to leave them in a driveway, put your alarms on, because, I think, I don't know. Whoever you are, Mr. Criminal, I don't appreciate you coming into North Huntington Township, and I'm going to recommend you stay the hell out of here, because you're going to run into the wrong person one day, and it's not going to end well for you. So my recommendation is, actually no recommendation, but I just wanted to thank the police department for doing a great job responding as quickly as they did. That's issue number one. Issue number two, would really like to discuss what's going on with Spitz's Auto, and how we need to get on with them or talk to them. I received so many complaints about the look of Spitz Auto on Route 30. It's just really, it's terrible. They haven't done anything in months in regards to a fence. They put a couple PVC pipes and chains, and that's not what I'm looking for. That's not what nobody in this township's looking for. We want to beautify this township. We have a beautiful township to live in. We want it to get prettier. We want to, progress, not digress in beauty, and it's certainly not going on over there at Spitz's Auto. And I'm sorry to call them out by name, but I mean, this has been several months, and it just looks shabby, and it's a bad representation to our beautiful community. And a lot of people in the community are tired of looking at it. So if we'd talk to them, please.
We will.
Thank you.
Anything else from the board?
I'd like to second what Brian said about the resolution about legalizing marijuana. I'd like to see us vote on that next week. I mean, you can think what you want about it being a gateway drug, but I've seen it firsthand, and it definitely is, and it leads to way more problems than it's worth. And I think that's a good idea.
I'm okay with that as well. Brian, did you want the manager to come up with something maybe to put on for a vote for next week?
I'd like to add that the township has the ability to control to some degree where those operations should be located if they are legalized. And it seems like the governor might be going that route. So maybe the planning and zoning should take a look at where we would agree to have those operations.
No. The dispensaries are basically retail operations, and if it's a permitted retail use, it's a permitted use. The manufacturing and processing can be controlled in industrial. But I've went to a lot of the seminars from the state, and it basically, if a Rite Aid can go into a part, a dispensary can go into a portion.
Just so you know, Jeff's right on with that.
Then I would be with Brian and Ron.
Jeff can come up with something we'll put on for next week. Anything else from the board tonight? Any further comments? All right, just need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Discussion, all those in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 7-0. Meeting adjourned at 8:15.